nature that you would like to
Yes,
begin with?
I
Oh,
do have a
right,
question.
of course, I can't hear you because I forgot to click this button
That's good.
over here.
But I'm gonna
Yes.
my quick guys at Judy's house, can you mute, please?
Sorry.
No problem. Question: when you are making tea from essence on Shabbos, do you pour the essence into the water or the water onto the essence if the essence is cold?
Well, there are two issues here. Issue number one is bishul, cooking. Issue number two we'll come to in a minute or two. The second issue we're going to come to is Sylvia coloring. Let's talk issues one at a time. Pouring hot water from a kli rishon. A kli rishon was on the fire, it was on the source of heat. The hot water will heat the cold tea essence, and that will be a prohibition of bishul, of cooking, and therefore the hot water must come from a kli sheni, and some poskim hold kli shlishi, and therefore it's a worthy chumrah to take the water, hot water, in a kli shlishi before pouring it onto the essence. Those who do kli sheni, yesh malasmuch b'vadai. So that's the first issue, bishul. Second issue, Sylvia, coloring. Coloring or dyeing is one.
Sorry, from the bishul point of view, you would pour it into a kli shlishi before doing the next step.
So the hot water comes from the kli shlishi into the tea, into the cold tea essence.
Right, right. Okay, so it's like a kli revi'i.
Not wrong, but kli shlishi is a good chumrah, a stricter position. Now, so there, the dyeing is one of the 39 prohibited labors on Shabbos. However, the vast majority of poskim agree. Ein tzovea ba'ochel. There's no prohibition of coloring with food. And therefore, according to the vast majority of poskim, there's no objection to add the tea to the water, even though you are coloring the water. The vast majority of poskim hold that's okay. Those who wish to be mahmir and do it the other way around, clear water added to the tea so as not to color the well, that's not a foolish position. That's a chumrah, and that's okay. Bottom line, Hadin, hot water from kli sheni into the tea is fine. Min hadin, cold tea essence into the hot water, which is in a kli sheni, is fine. Going to kli shlishi is a good chumrah, and pouring the water into the tea rather than the tea into the water is a chumrah. There are some poskim who recommend that. That's okay.
So that would be, if you doing it b'chumrah, then would you pour the water into a fourth vessel, kli shlishi, if you were going to pour onto the tea essence?
No, going beyond kli shlishi is of no value. That's
so if you were going to pour it onto the tea essence, you could put the tea essence into the third vessel and pour from the hot water from the sheni into the shlishi.
Correct.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. That's tea. I remember I used to live in back in my student days Oh, I should not admit that I was ever a student. Uh, Earlier in my life, I lived for a period in Boston, in the United States. The Rav of Boston was Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, the famous Rosh Yeshiva from Yeshiva University. And some acquaintances of mine once invited him for a Shabbos meal. And after the meal, they offered tea. And they prepared the tea with this complicated klishlishi procedure in the most machmir way possible. To which the rabbi said, "Don't you have a tea bag?" Um, well, pouring water from a klisheni onto a tea bag or loose tea is min hadin permissible. Um, those who wish to be machmir and not do it, our poskim will prohibit it. And we can surely smile upon people who want to be machmir, but people who are using tea bags in that way, hot water from a klisheni onto the tea bag or onto loose tea, that's okay. Now, of course, similar questions arise with coffee. The most common question asked nowadays about preparation of coffee has to do with what they call a French press. French press means you pour the coffee, the raw, well, roasted coffee, you put it into a glass cylinder, pour in the hot water, and you push a plunger down, which forces all of the coffee grounds to the bottom, and then you can pour off the coffee from the top. That's a French press. Well, this, of course, raises the question of borer. Um, and the Mishnah Brewer says, and most poskim agree, that in the good old days, not so long ago, when I was young, milk fat, cream, milk fat means the same thing. Milk fat or cream used to rise to the top of the milk bottle. Milk used to be supplied in bottles, and it's hard to believe, but we used to buy milk in bottles. Actually, we didn't buy it, it was delivered to the house every day. And if you just let the bottle stand, all the cream floats to the top. And of course, you could carefully pour off the cream and use that for certain recipes, or you could shake up the whole thing and get. Nowadays, at least here in Israel, all the ordinary milk is homogenized. The milk is forced under high pressure through a very small nozzle, and the high pressure stream of milk is aimed at a stainless steel target. And as the milk hits the target, all of the tiny globules of cream break up into very tiny globules, and they get mixed up with the milk. They dissolve in the milk and no longer separate. That's the homogenized milk which we have nowadays. But back before homogenized milk, the Mishnah Berurah discusses the following situation. You have two glasses, one empty, an empty glass, and a glass filled with milk. The glass filled with milk has all the cream floating on the top and the non-fat milk under it. You take the glass with the milk and the cream floating on the top, and you carefully pour off the cream into the empty glass so as to have the cream separate. This is a prohibition of borer, separating, because you're separating the cream from the milk, and you're indeed using a kli. You're using a utensil for the purpose. These glasses that you're pouring one from the other, these are utensils, and this is simply prohibited. Therefore, the Mishnah Berurah says, if you want to cream, then as you pour the cream into the empty container, make sure that you do not pour all of the cream. leave some cream in the together with the milk. Do not complete the process of separating. If you do not complete the process of separating, then you've not yet done borer, because the glass still has both the milk and the cream in it. Similarly, with a French press, if you push the plunger down, filtering the coffee, forcing all the coffee grounds to the bottom of the French press, if you do not push the plunger all the way down, leave some noticeable space between the filter and the bottom of the French press, there you will still have coffee and coffee grounds mixed together. You've not completed the process of separation, and all is well.
That's l'hatchila.
Yeah, that should be okay, correct.
Humros.
Okay, any other issues about?
Just one more thing. Would you theoretically use a tea bag on Shabbos?
The issue is as follows. The, the issue is as follows. Although pouring hot water from a cliche onto raw food or tea leaves is okay. There's no prohibition of bishul there. Nonetheless, the Gemara says some foods like small fish require so little cooking. They're so easily cooked, they're so quickly cooked that even the hot water from a cliche can cook very small fish. And for better or worse, that means unfortunately, the Gemara and the Poskim do not give us any clear guidelines about exactly which foods fall into this category of kalei habishul, so easily and quickly cooked that even hot water from Klisheni will make you guilty of cooking them if you pour the hot water onto the raw, whatever it is. We don't know what falls into this category aside from small fish, the example of the Gemara. And therefore, many poskim, I think most poskim, including the Mishnah Berurah, recommend not pouring from klisheni, but pouring from klishlishi onto the raw food, so as not to be guilty of cooking something which is easily, quickly cooked. Now, therefore, even according to the Machmir position, klishlishi, pouring hot water from klishlishi onto tea bag or raw loose tea should be fine, no problem at all. The only one of the big name poskim who's unhappy with this is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says, "Einenu haroot," we see with our own eyes that the tea brews even if you pour hot water from kli shalishi, even kli revi, even kli x+1. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the tea that we see that the tea brews and you end up with tea, and therefore it's always prohibited, whether it's kli, sheni, shlishi, revi, chamishi, lo chashuv, ma, it's all just prohibited. This is the position of the Aruch HaShulchan. Most poskim, like the Igros Moshe, make no sense of this at all. They don't begin to understand the Aruch HaShulchan. After all, even though I am not from California, and even though I have never lived in California, nonetheless, I am very well read. That means I've read a lot, and I know what sun tea is. So I'll give you the recipe for sun tea, and you'll understand right away. You take a pitcher of water straight from the faucet or the tap, depending whether or not you're in a Commonwealth nation or in North America, either from the faucet or the tap, and you put tea bags into the pitcher of water, or loose tea into the pitcher of water, and you place the pitcher in the sun. come back 2 hours later, and you have sun tea. Well, as the Igros Moshe and most poskim point out, you don't even need hot water to make tea. Any water will change the color, the flavor of the tea will be leached out into the water. The water doesn't even have to be hot. Uh, Even room temperature water. That's not called cooking. Pouring hot water on tea is not called cooking, because exactly the same thing happens without any heat at all. And therefore, although the Aruch HaShulchan is indeed strict and prohibits preparing tea bags, any water poured on tea bags or loose tea, most poskim have no understanding of this position and reject it. Okay. Shall we talk about Emet V'Sheker? I know how to get this on the screen. Now, Emet V'Sheker. Truth and falsehood. Well, there's a typographical error here. His name is not Alain de Botton. His name is de Bitton. It's Bitton. I just didn't type his name correctly. He's from an Egyptian family. He grew up in Switzerland. A a philosopher, quite influential in English literature nowadays. I'm pretty sure that he's Jewish. After all, the name de Biton, from the town of Biton in Spain. His family's in Egypt, but surely a Jewish family which originated from Spain. This was the family name of the Lechem Mishnah, one of the great commentaries on the on the Mishnah Torah, on the Rambam. Rav Di Baton, he was the greatest of the rabbis in Turkey in the generation right after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. I think he was either born in Turkey or arrived in Turkey as a baby from Spain. So the Biton families are mostly Jewish families in North Africa and Turkey today. So he's probably Jewish, but I'm not so sure. In any event, he points out that lying can sometimes be quite beneficial for everyone involved, for the liar, for the person being lied to. There are situations where happy results for everyone be achieved by lying. Shakespeare knew that a lot of people lie. Let's see what the poskim have to say about this. Sefer Yereim, Ashkenaz Rishon, from the town of Metz. The town of Metz nowadays, they moved into France. Back in those days, it was, well, Germany didn't exist yet, but it was in the German-speaking area in those days. Tziva Yotzreinu, the Creator commanded us, Kadosh Baruch Hu commanded us, L'hitrachik Mekol Sheker, to distance ourselves from any sheker, from any lying. Sheyuchal lavo shikro lidei hezek. If it is possible for the lie to result in harm, injury, or damage. The commandment to distance ourselves from lying, the commandment prohibiting lying, prohibits lies prohibits sheker if it is possible for that sheker to lead to harm, injury, or damage. Chavero, against your fellow man. Tzarich letet lev bazeh. We should pay attention to this matter. Sheyuchal lavo shikrot lidei hezek. Must think very carefully about any lie that you want to tell. You must think very carefully whether it's possible for the lie to result in damage, harm, or injury. If so, it's prohibited. But if it's perfectly clear that that no damage will result, no one will be harmed, then there's no particular prohibition in lying. For example, if it's bright and sunny outside, and everyone sees that it's bright and sunny outside, and I lie and say, oh, it's boring out there. Everyone take your umbrella before you go out. Open your umbrellas. Well, of course, my lie is perfectly harmless, and no one is going to believe me. No one is going to be injured or harmed in any way. Everyone sees that it's a beautiful sunny day outside. No one's going to take their umbrellas. Well, that's maybe an extreme example. We'll see better examples in subsequent discussion. The Tosafot disagree with the Sefer Yereim. They were contemporaries. Beit Shammai Amru, he quotes the Gemara, Haresha Haita Higeret Osama, if the bride limped or was blind, Omrim, Kalanam Vechasuna, one still says, what a beautiful bride she is. Torah Amra, but how is it possible to say, what a beautiful bride? She limps and she is blind. The Torah says, not allowed to tell a lie. How is this possible? Yesh lomar de Beit Shammai savri. It must be that Beit Shammai holds as follows. Af al gav yishabchenu beinav, even though you praise the bride when speaking to the groom, ein lahem l'chachamim l'taken l'hazkik lomar sheker. Nonetheless, you do not actually tell any lie. The Torah amra midvar sheker tirchak, because the Torah prohibits lying, and therefore, although you can praise the kala when speaking to the chatan, you cannot lie about her and say she doesn't limp. When she does limp, you cannot lie about her and say, should I reclaim host? I guess. I reclaim host. You should not lie about her, even though there's no damage is going to result. It turns out that according to Tosafot, sheker, lying, is absolutely prohibited. It doesn't matter whether the lying is going to lead to any damage, any harm, or any injury. It's just flat out prohibited by the Torah. This is a big machlokas, disagreement between Sefer Yereim, and I could quote a whole list of other Rishonim who agree with the Sefer Yereim that lying is prohibited only in cases where it's possible the damage, injury, or harm will result, is against the Tosafot, who hold that even an innocent lie, which will not lead to any damage, any harm and injury, is still prohibited. Well, given this machloket, we would want to know what the Acharonim have to say. Which of these two opinions is the opinion embraced by the modern poskim? Let's see. Igris Moshe has to say, Rav Moshe Feinstein, the greatest of the rabbis of North America. He writes, Sheker asur afilu im sheker lo yavi lidei hezek. Sheker is prohibited. Lying is prohibited, even if it is clear that no damage or harm will result. He writes about the matriculation exams in American secondary schools. In the state of New York, he was in the state of New York. The city of New York is in the state of New York. Doesn't always work out that way in the United States. Cities are in the states which have the same name, but in this case, it does work out. He was in the city of New York, which is in the state of New York. The state of New York has matriculation exams for children in secondary school. Those are called the regents exams. The board of regents. That's the board, the governmental board, which is in charge of secondary education in the state of New York. They have matriculation exams. And there was a scandal back in the days of Reb Moshe Feinstein. Perhaps it sounds better if I say it in Yiddish. There was a scandal back in the days of Reb Moshe Feinstein of Bachurei Yeshiva Bachurim, who were in secondary school, stealing copies of the Regents exam, the matriculation exam, a week or so before having to sit for the exam. And therefore, they were cheating. They figured out the answers, perhaps consulting other people, before they actually sat for the exam. And Reb Moshe writes, Asur l'shaker, b'chol afin. It's always prohibited to lie, af she'eino nogea l'shum davar, even though no one is going to be harmed, no one is going to be injured. You'll get a certificate saying you matriculated from secondary school, you graduated secondary school, but even if it's true that no one will be harmed by this, even if it's true that no damage will result, even if all that's true, it's still prohibited. Because there are only tlat mili, three categories. Tlat means three. Tlat mili, there are only three categories where it is permissible to lie. But we're going to, a little bit later, we're going to list the three categories and we'll go through them one at a time. But the matriculation exams in the state of New York are not mentioned in the Gemara as being one of the three situations in which lying is permitted. And therefore, even if it is perfectly clear that no damage, no harm, no injury will result, still prohibited. Well, it's quite clear that the Igros Moshe is embracing the opinion of the Tosafot that sheker, lying, is prohibited even if no nezek will result. Now, let's take a look at the Sefer Chavetz Chaim. This is not the famous Sefer Chavetz Chaim, not the more famous Sefer Chavetz Chaim written by the Mishnah Berurah. This is an older Sefer with the same name, written by Reb Chaim Falachi, who in the 19th century was the greatest of the Rabbanim in Turkey. Immensely influential personality. It is simply permitted to lie if lying will enable you to fulfill a mitzvah. If lying will enable you to fulfill a mitzvah, the lie is permissible. No damage will result. On the contrary, something good is going to come out of this lie. You're going to be able to fulfill a mitzvah. You'll be able to fulfill a mitzvah, and therefore all is well. V'chein mipnei mitzvahs kibud avim, honoring one's parents is a mitzvah, and if lying will enable you to honor your parents, go for it. Entirely permissible. After all, the honor of the parents is compared by Chazal to the honor of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Well, for this mitzvah, of course, you can lie like for any other mitzvah, where the fulfillment of the mitzvah requires lying, sheker, go for it. Hu adin lasot tzedakah v'chesed. If lying will enable you to do tzedakah and chesed, go for it. The Gemara tells the story of one of the great rabbis from the Talmudic period, who, in addition to being a great rabbi, was also the gabbai of the Kupa Shel Tzedakah. He ran the local charity fund in the town where he lived. And what he would do was he would borrow funds from the charity fund. He would borrow funds from the charity fund, and then he would go around to the rich people in town and say, the charity fund is down to zero. We need more contributions. Why? Well, why was it zero? Because he just took the money out so that he could lie and say that we have no money in the fund. Of course he had money in the fund. He just put it aside, that's all. But for chesed, for tzedakah, it's okay to lie. Sometimes this is relatively harmless. Sometimes it might not be. For example, I was once in conversation with one of the great rabbis of the previous generation in his study. And while we were in conversation, there's a knock at the door, and the rabbi's secretary sticks his head into the room and says, Rabbi so-and-so is on the phone and insists on speaking with you. What shall I say? The rabbi said, one moment. And he stands up from his desk, takes a few steps to the door, takes a step out of the door, and tells the secretary, tell him I'm not here. Well, he wasn't there. He took a step out the door. This I propose as a relatively harmless example of lying for chesed and tzedakah. I'll tell you another story. I used to live abroad. I know that's hard to believe. And while I lived abroad, long before the days of internet, I received solicitations for charitable contributions. And I used to mail a check, a small check, every month to a fund in Yerushalayim, which advertised itself as providing food baskets for needy families every Erev Shabbos. I thought that was a worthy cause to support. And every month I would send them a small check. And indeed, when they were soliciting contributions, they had a long list of great rabbis in Yerushalayim who signed off on the worthiness of this tzedakah fund. In the fullness of time, I end up living in Yerushalayim myself. And I say, wow, I'm going to go to this charity fund and say hello. I've been supporting them for quite a while. Now I'm going to go and introduce myself. I find the address, and there is no charity fund. I mean, it's just someone's apartment, and no one happens to be home at the moment. So I stop a few neighbors and I say, where is this charity fund that distributes baskets of food to needy families every Friday? It's supposed to be at this address. And the neighbors tell me, oh, no, that's just this family. This is just the way this family collects funds. Well, I was a little bit upset to hear that. And I turned to one of the rabbis, the first rabbi in the list, who had signed off on the worthiness of this tzedakah. And I said to him, is this not ramaut? Is this not some kind of fraud? They're not distributing food baskets to the needy every Friday. I've just been supporting this family for the last few years. To which the rabbi told me, don't worry, everything is fine. You did a great mitzvah because they need the money. Well, here we have an example of the application of the Shita, the opinion of the Chavetz Chaim, Reb Chaim Falachi, why, for the purpose of tzedakah, is acceptable. The matter is slightly more extreme when we look at the Michtav Eliyahu. Michtav Eliyahu, the, the writings of Rav Dessler, originally from Lithuania. After the Holocaust, he was in England for a while, came to Eretz Yisrael. He's probably the most influential thinker as far as Musar and Machshava is concerned in the Yeshiva world today. Let's see what he has to say about Sheker and Emet. Mahu Emet v'Sheker. What exactly is the difference between Emet, truth, and Sheker, lying? What exactly defines a lie? Well, it defines for us Emet, truth, hu masha mevi l'tov, l'ratzon haboreh. Emet, a true statement, is any statement which will lead to good things happening and mitzvahs being fulfilled. Sheker, hu masha noten hatzlacha l'asakav shel shar sheker. Sheker is anything which will benefit the Sitra Achra, the Yetzer Hara. Anything which will benefit evil is Sheker. You notice right away that what is Emet and what is Sheker do not correspond with factual truth. Rather, what is Emet and what is Sheker correspond with the results. If mitzvahs result, it's called Emet. If evil results, it's called Sheker. Someone wants to sin, even if what this sinner says corresponds precisely with the facts, even if what the sinner says corresponds exactly with reality, Nonetheless, this is considered sheker because an evil person said it. Kol pratei ma'asim mitztarfim kekelim l'tachlito ikar. Since this evil person wants to do evil, everything he says is joined together with the evil deeds and is called sheker. Even though his statements correspond with the facts, even though his statements correspond with reality, since his intention is to sin, that's sheker. Yaakov Avinu, everyone knows the story. Yaakov Avinu and how he fooled his father to get the blessing of the firstborn. Well, that was a little bit of fraud that Yaakov Avinu perpetrated on his father. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to. He was crying and forced to engage in this fraud. He had no choice about it. He didn't lie for his own benefit when he wanted the rights of the firstborn. He was not lying for his own benefit. He was lying so that he would get the rights of the firstborn, because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Sheker l'shem emet kazeh, lying for a good purpose like this, hu emet, that's called telling the truth. Esav, on the other hand, Amisad Shitas Tzuyim. Esav, on the other hand, the originator of hypocrisy, and to this very day, there are many hypocrites out there. Esav hamivakesh laser teven umelach b'shasha b'seter over kol avirat chamurot. Esav asked whether he has to separate Trumot and Maserot from salt. A little bit of a silly question. Of course, you don't have to. Only wanted to give the impression that he was very strict in performance of mitzvahs while he was actually committing every imaginable sin. Esav hamidafek musos mishpach v'nosei isha ben arba'im shana hu shechidesh minhag she'efshar lasot kol averot. Esav would violate every commandment, Sheba'olam, every commandment in the world, ish nichbad, while remaining an honored person in society. Lo irala scandal, never was there any scandal attached to him in his lifetime. A gentleman hazeh, Esav, this gentleman who kulo sheker, was 100% lies. Even when he said, I am the firstborn, which happened to be factually true, which happened to correspond with reality, even that statement was a lie. Kol masha oseh chelik mishamesh kli l'chaim mezuyafim haye sheker shalom. Anything which comes out of the mouth of the evil person is called sheker. Anything which comes out of the mouth of the tzaddik is called emet. That's the difference between emet and the sheker, having no particular connection with the facts on the ground, having no particular connection with reality.
Sorry, Rafi, what is that word there that you've got highlighted?
Which word? Mizuyafim. The mizuyaf is a forgery, fakery. His life was a fake. Was all faking, all fakery. He was the father of all hypocrites. He was really an evil person, even though he presented himself as he was.
How, sorry, it's a bit of it, but how, if no scandal was ever touched him in his life, how did he do that? How was he doing all those Averas with not a suspicion of any scandal?
He was able to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. What, unfortunately, aren't you living in Australia? Unfortunately, there are many people, even in public life, who people think of as being righteous tzaddikim, and sometimes it is revealed that they are guilty of the most heinous crimes. Well, everyone thought that this was an upstanding citizen until the crimes were revealed by Esav. They were never revealed. Okay, so far we have two approaches. The approach of the Sefer Yereim, sheker is permitted if the result is good. That is an extreme example of that is the position of the Michtav Me'Eliyahu that we just looked at. The other position is that sheker is always prohibited, doesn't matter what. That's the position of the Tosafot, apparently embraced by the Igros Moshe, by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Now let's take a look at another passage in Gemara. Amar Rabbi Lai, Mishum Rabbi Yosef ben Shimshon. The great rabbi said, Mutar lo la'adam l'shanot. It is permissible for someone to change. L'shanot is a euphemistic way of saying lie, tell an untruth. It is permissible to tell an untruth, bidvar shalom, in order to maintain shalom, good relations between people. That's the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Nosson disagrees and says it's not permitted. Mitzvah, it's a mitzvah to do so. Well, so here we have a little bit of a machlokes. According to the first opinion, it is permissible to lie in order to maintain or in order to establish good relationships between people. Permitted. According to the second opinion, it's a mitzvah. Not only permitted, it's what you should do. But which of these two opinions is embraced by the poskim? Rambam says, Im hevi shalom, ben adam lechavero, someone who establishes a relationship of shalom between two people, the hosif v'gara, and added and subtracted from the facts, lied in order to make them friendly again, so they like each other. That's permitted. Rambam is clearly embracing the first opinion. It's permitted to lie, to bring shalom between the two parties. And the notice of the Rambam insists that the lie is permissible only if it is successful in bringing peace between the parties involved. If you were successful in making peace, then it turns out that the lie you told was permissible. If the lie failed to establish peace, it's still a lie and prohibited. That's the approach of Rambam. The approach of Rambam, one of the great Rishonim, everyone knows, 12th century, is embraced by the Mogen Avram. There are two great commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, Mogen Avram and Taz. First, we look at the Magen Avram. Magen Avram embraces the approach of Rambam. B'shlosha devarim mutar l'shanot. Wherever the Gemara permits lying, in the three cases, we haven't yet listed the three cases yet, it's permissible to lie. And the more famous Chafetz Chaim, written by the Mishnah Berurah, says, mitzvah l'shanot mipnei shalom. The Mishnah Berurah, in his Sefer, Chafetz Chaim, paskins, like the second opinion, it's a mitzvah to lie. Paskasham came ferosh, and he paskins this way. He paskins that way because the Rif and the Rosh did so. Now, the Sefer Chafetz Chaim was published anonymously. That's why it's called the Sefer Chafetz Chaim. Only later was the author revealed. It's a Sefer which he wrote at the beginning of his career. This is the first Sefer that he published, and it established his reputation. Towards the end of his life, he published the Mishnah Berurah, when he was already very famous. And then in the Mishnah Berurah, he says, Yarhik mesheka betachlit arichuk, ach mipnei shalom mutar l'shanot. Well, in the Mishnah Berurah, he contradicts what he had published earlier in the Sefer Chafetz Chaim. In the Sefer Chafetz Chaim, he wrote mitzvah l'shanot. It's a mitzvah to lie, to bring peace between the parties. In the Mishnah Berurah, he wrote towards the end of his life, he says, mutter l'shanot. Well, the contradictions which appear in the writings of great rabbis call for analysis, demand some understanding. Of course, a great rabbi can change his mind, but he should say so. I mean, she should point out, although I wrote in some earlier sefer that it's a mitzvah, I've changed my mind, and now I think it's only mutter. Just to leave the reading public, just to leave the Talmidim with a flat-out contradiction demands some kind of explanation. Indeed, I used to exercise myself a lot to try to resolve, to try to harmonize such contradictions until I read the biography of the Chafetz Chaim written by his son. The son wrote, the reason there are contradictions in the Mishnah Berurah, internal contradictions between one passage and another in the Mishnah Berurah. The reason that the Mishnah Berurah occasionally contradicts other Svarim, which my father wrote, which the Chafetz Chaim wrote, the reason is my father did not write all of the Mishnah Berurah. We were three authors. My father wrote most of it, but he hired me, paid me 1.5 rubles per month, and he hired my brother-in-law, 1.5 rubles per month, to write certain sections of the Mishnah Berurah. And then the son points out a number of contradictions, and he says, well, this was written by my father, this was written by me, this was written by my brother-in-law, this was written by my father, and that's why there are contradictions. Well, once I learned that there were 3 independent authors of the Mishnah Berurah and no one editor who harmonized it all and ironed out the contradictions, so I'm no longer so exercised. about no longer some other contradictions. In the Chavetz Chaim, he held mitzvah, lishanot. It's a mitzvah to lie. In the Mishnah Berurah, he says it's mutar, lishanot. Probably this passage in the Mishnah Berurah was written by the son or the brother-in-law, and not by the Chavetz Chaim himself. Probably. No way to know, and therefore, no reason to get excited. Well, it's either a mitzvah or simply permitted to lie. In cases of shalom, which demands a definition of what is shalom. The Lev Chaim, written by the same Reb Chaim Falachi, who wrote that other sefer called Chafetz Chaim that we quoted earlier, was asked, "Imutar l'shaker kishaosa is a mitzvah of Hasidus." If you are very pious, if you are very frum, and you are performing a great act of piety, a great act of Hasidus, can you lie about it? Can you hide your acts of Hasidus? Can you hide your acts of piety from the public? And if people ask you about them, can you lie and say, no, I don't do that. I never did that. Even though you did. So that people will not mock you. You deny having engaged in acts of piety, and the reason you deny it, falsely deny it, is so that no one will mock you. Can you lie about performing the mitzvah? Say you didn't do it? Can you lie about the Hasidus, the act of piety, and say you didn't do it? Tshuva. If you are afraid that there will be tension and quarreling with other people, that's the definition of shalom. Anything which eliminates tension and arguing between people, that's shalom. If you're afraid that people will mock you, creating a relationship of tension and arguing, if you're afraid that you'll end up arguing with people, it's a mitzvah to lie in those cases and deny that you have performed the act of piety. You can lie about it. That's correct. Call. It's a mitzvah to lie if that will maintain good relations between you and the other people. Bottom line, you're allowed to lie. So the definition of what constitutes shalom is any lying about anything which will maintain good relations between the people, eliminating source of tension and argument. Now, we spoke over and over again about the three categories where the Gemara says lying is appropriate. And I haven't listed the three categories yet. Here they are. It says in the Gemara, Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel. The Gemara says, Bahane tlat mile. In the following three things, tlat means three. In the following three things, Avide Rabbanan de Meshanu, rabbis lie. Here are the three things. Mesichta, regarding the tractate of the Gemara that they are learning, they lie. The Puria.
I think which of those words means lie?
Mishana, Lishanot, Mishanu.
Thank you.
Literally means change, but it's a euphemism for deviating from the facts, for lying. The first category is the tractate of Gemara. Second category is Puria, the bed where you slept. They lie about the bed where they slept. Ushpiza. And the third category is the host. If they were a guest in someone's house, they lie about it. Well, what on earth are these three categories? Rashi explains, B'Mesichta, lying about the tractate in the Gemara that you are learning. Someone asks the rabbi, do you know tractate such and such clearly? Do you have it all organized in your mind? Even though the rabbi knows that tractate perfectly, in and out, backwards and forwards, Yomarlo, you can still reply, Love, I don't know that tractate. I haven't learned it recently. Don't ask me any questions about it. Don't know much about it. Midas anavahi. This is being humble. That he really does know everything there is to know about that tractate. But he says, don't ask me anything about it. I really don't know much about that tractate. I don't know much about that issue. That's modesty. That's being humble. And that's okay. The Lechem Mishnah, Reb Chaim de Beton, the original de Beton, says, Mishanu Kidei Shelo Yidbayesh. The reason to lie, in this case, is lest they ask you a question which you don't know the answer to. If you say that you learned the tractate, and then they ask you a question about it, and you don't know the answer, so you'll be embarrassed. Two different explanations. One Rashi, one the Lechem Mishnah, about why it is correct to say, oh, I don't know anything about that topic, when really you do. According to Rashi, it's a matter of humility. According to Lechem Mishnah, it's so that you will not be embarrassed if they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to. What's this lying about the bed that you sleep in? Rashi says, Shimashta mitatcha. If someone asks the rabbi, did you engage in marital intimacy in that bed? Yomar lav. You say no. My wife didn't. This is being modest, and therefore lying is okay. Tosafot understands it a little bit differently. The reason to be mishana, the reason to lie in this case, is shelo yidganeh, so that people will not think disrespectfully of you. The ushpiza, lying about the host, where you were a guest in someone's house. Why is that lie okay? Sha'aluhu alushpizo. People ask him, oh, you were a guest in someone's house. How was the hospitality there? Did you have a good time when you were hosted by so and so? Kibu b'sev panim yafos. Did they take care of you well when you were in someone's house? Yomar, you should lie and answer, love. No, they didn't take care of me very well. It wasn't very hospitable in that person's house. This is a good lie. So that all the people will not jump upon that host and seek to be invited and stay in his house. If you publicize how good the hospitality was, then everyone is going to want to be hosted there. And too many people will come and seek hospitality there. And they'll bankrupt him. They'll bankrupt him. So even though it's true that the host spent a lot of money and provided wonderful hospitality, you should lie about it, so that people will not jump upon the host and end up ruining him financially. Rambam says, if you were successful in bringing peace between people, that is a lie which is permissible. So, with this, we've covered the principal opinions, the principal sources of the poskim regarding Sheker ve'emet. We'll pause with this. I wish you a good week and a safe week. Eventually, Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to see you all again next week in our continuation. Any questions? No
I guess
questions? Yes.
I guess the question is just how does particularly the the last one about lying about the host, how does that apply today?
It can apply today as well. Someone provided you with superb hospitality, and you asked about it. You can say, it's permissible to say, it was okay, nothing special.
Excuse me, also, I guess this also permits the idea of spying, right? Spying for your country. You're creating a benefit. We also didn't talk about saving your life, but I'm assuming that all fits in.
Yeah, let's. All of this has to do with situations which are not life-threatening. And if there's pikuach nefesh, then of course one should lie. But spying, presenting yourself in some foreign country as in a deceitful way, well, the only question is whether it's mutter, according to many poskim, because of the good result, or is it a mitzvah, according to other poskim? There's a slight difference between them. Mutter, surely, perhaps even a mitzvah. Okay. Any other issues for today? Good.
So I remember learning many years ago that questions, and I guess that falls into the second category, that questions that invade your personal privacy, that overstep boundaries, therefore you would be permitted. Like if somebody would say to you, "Are you pregnant?"
Mhm.
That would fit in there, that you could say no, even if you were.
It's a matter of privacy or a matter of secrecy. There's two different concepts. Privacy, or in Commonwealth English, privacy, as opposed to secrecy. I'll give you a few examples. You'll understand the importance of this distinction. If I'm sitting in a public place, typing email on my laptop computer, I will not be surprised if some passerby looks at my screen and sees what I'm writing. On the other hand, in the old days, before we had email, if I'm in a public place, in the park, with a sheet of paper, writing a letter to someone, I'd be shocked if a passerby stopped and read what I'm writing. Well, let's turn to your example. Imagine for a moment a young couple on Shabbat afternoon sitting on a park bench observing their three little children playing in the park. And the woman is highly pregnant. There's no secret about where all these children came from. There's no secrecy about her pregnancy. She does not dress in a way to hide her pregnancy. It's not a secret that she's pregnant. and where the pregnancy came from and where all the children came from is not a secret. That's we're perfectly open about that. We could live in another society where all this was kept very secret, and young parents would not be seen in public together with their little children. It's imaginable that in a different society, secrecy would be considered bad. But in our society, we have no objection to secrecy. Privacy, on the other hand, modesty and privacy is on the other hand a great value. What the husband and wife did together last night in their marital bed, it's a private matter. We don't want the public to know about that. That's the difference between privacy and secrecy. So if it's merely, if a woman is obviously pregnant, well, there's nothing to ask about. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what's going on. But I have a daughter who is a professional seamstress. She's the first in the family to observe a woman in the family is pregnant. She says, didn't you notice that she was wearing the same dress 2 weeks ago and now it fits differently? Well, she's the first to notice this, and she's very sensitive to the way clothing fits. There's no secret. Okay.
And
Any other issues?
and privacy wouldn't apply there.
Privacy, we insist on privacy as far as the act of marital intimacy. That's an event. That we don't talk about and we don't reveal.
Okay, but if a woman is, say, I don't know, 8 weeks or 9 weeks, she's not showing at all, and somebody says to her, "Are you pregnant?"
No objection at all. Telling the truth.
But can she not?
Some benefit is going to, some benefit will result. Can't imagine what that might be.
Reveal it yet. She doesn't want to be asked, when are you due, all this kind of, she doesn't want all those kind of invasive questions. Or
if so, if there's some benefit, then yes, she can lie. She might think the benefit is ayin hara. She might think that revealing pregnancy before a certain period will stimulate ayin hara, which she wants to avoid. If that's what she thinks, then that's the benefit.
right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I wish you well.
Shalom, shalom. Be well.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.